The massive glass doors slid open with a soft hiss, and Emily stepped into the grand marble hall of Blackwell Enterprises. Her heart pounded so hard she could almost hear it echoing off the walls. Everything was too polished, too perfect. Golden chandeliers, men in crisp suits, women walking briskly in heels that clicked like clockwork. It felt like another world, far from the gray walls of the orphanage she had once called home. She clutched the file in her trembling hands, the one containing her job appointment letter. Her first real job as an assistant in the biggest conglomerate in the city. Emily had worked her way up from nothing, from cleaning tables and tutoring kids, and now, finally, she was here. But nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to see. A tall man in a black suit appeared from the elevator. His stride was sharp, confident, his face unreadable. Everyone bowed slightly when he passed. Emily followed their lead, lowering her gaze. "That's him," whispered the receptionist beside her. "Mr. Alexander Blackwell, the CEO." Emily's breath caught. She didn't dare look directly. The aura around him was icy, commanding. Someone who didn't just walk into a room, he owned it. "Miss Carter," the receptionist said, "you're his new assistant. You'll be reporting directly to him." Emily blinked. "To him?" "Yes. Don't keep him waiting." She swallowed hard, straightened her blouse, and walked toward the elevator, her knees weak. Inside, she could still feel the ghost of the orphanage, the peeling paint, the laughter of the children, the smell of old books. But that world seemed light years away from the penthouse floor she was about to step into. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped out into an office that could have been in a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. The walls were lined with paintings, each worth more than her lifetime savings. But it was the massive portrait hanging behind the CEO's desk that drew her in. She froze. Her breath stopped. Her eyes widened as she stared at the painting. A portrait of a young boy with gentle brown eyes and a familiar half-smile. She knew that face. She couldn't mistake it. The file slipped from her hands and scattered across the floor. "Boss, that boy lived with me in the orphanage," she cried, her voice trembling. The room fell silent. Alexander Blackwell, seated behind his desk, slowly lifted his gaze from the screen. His eyes, cold gray, met hers, and for a second, something flickered behind them. Recognition, pain, she couldn't tell. "Excuse me." His voice was low, controlled, like a knife sliding through silk. Emily stepped forward, pointing at the portrait. "That boy, I knew him. His name was Liam. We grew up together. He was my best friend." Her voice cracked. "We were supposed to be adopted together, but he was taken away first. I never saw him again." The CEO's hand clenched around his pen. "Where did you say you grew up?" he asked quietly. "At St. Mary's Orphanage," she said. "In the East District." He stood up. His tall frame cast a long shadow over her. The air in the room thickened. "Miss Carter," he said, "I think you're mistaken." "No," she insisted, shaking her head. "I remember him. His dimple, that scar under his eyebrow. We used to sneak into the kitchen at night and steal bread. I know that face. That's Liam." The man's jaw tightened. "That portrait is of my late brother," he said after a pause. "He died many years ago." Her heart dropped. "Your brother?" He nodded once. "Liam Blackwell." Emily stumbled back, tears springing to her eyes. Liam Blackwell. It couldn't be. Liam, her childhood friend, the boy who swore he'd come back for her, had been the heir to one of the richest families in the country. How could that be possible? Alexander studied her closely, every movement precise. "You claim to have known him." "I don't claim, I did know him," she cried. "He was kind, funny. He used to say we'd leave that place together one day." Her voice trembled. "He called me Sunshine." Alexander froze. For a moment, his mask slipped. His fingers twitched. He turned away, staring out the window as if trying to compose himself. "No one knows that name," he said under his breath. Emily frowned. "What?" He turned back to her. "No one besides me ever called him that." "You said he called you that." She nodded slowly. "Yes, he said I made the dark days a little brighter." Alexander's face went pale. He walked to the portrait and touched the edge of the frame. His eyes glistened for just a second before he blinked it away. "Then you're telling the truth," he said softly. "You really knew him." Emily looked at him, confused. What happened to him, sir? How did he? Enough, he interrupted sharply. This isn't something I discuss. She wanted to press further, but his tone warned her not to. He turned away, his shoulders rigid, and she could sense a pain buried so deep it was almost untouchable. I'm sorry, she whispered. He didn't respond. The rest of the day passed in silence. Emily did her work quietly, though her mind raced. How could her childhood friend be the brother of her boss? How could he have died without her ever knowing? That night, when everyone left the office, she stayed behind to organize files. She saw Alexander still there, staring at the portrait. The light from the city glowed behind him, making his silhouette seem lonely. She hesitated, then stepped forward. Mr. Blackwell, she said softly. May I ask, what really happened? He didn't turn. Why do you care? Because he was my family too, she whispered. He closed his eyes. The silence stretched until finally, he spoke. He was taken from the orphanage because my parents finally found him. We were separated as children when our parents died in an accident. He ended up in that orphanage while I was sent to relatives abroad. By the time I returned, he was already gone. Emily's eyes filled with tears. You mean, he never knew you were looking for him? Alexander shook his head. He knew. I told him I'd find him. But before I could, he stopped. His voice cracked for the first time. He drowned. Saving another boy. Emily gasped. No. Alexander's eyes were glassy. That was 15 years ago. I've never been back there since. She stood there, hands trembling. He saved me once too, she whispered. From falling off the orphanage roof. He always said, if I have to choose, I'll always protect you first. Something inside Alexander broke at that moment. He turned to her, his eyes searching her face as if seeing a reflection of his lost brother in her expression. Do you still remember him that vividly? He asked. I never forgot, she said softly. He was all I had. He looked down. You were important to him. I can see that now. Days passed. Alexander grew strangely distant yet attentive. He would watch her when she wasn't looking, listen when she spoke, ask small questions about the orphanage, about Liam. One evening, he called her into his office again. Emily, he said, his tone softer than before. I want you to come somewhere with me. She nodded, though uncertain. They drove through the city, the skyline fading into distant lights, until the car stopped in front of an old building, crumbling walls, rusted gates, and a faded sign. Street. Mary's Orphanage. Emily's throat tightened. It's still here. They walked through the gates. Dust covered everything, and the air smelled of time. In the courtyard, stood an old swing, still creaking in the wind. This is where he grew up, Alexander murmured. Where you both did. Emily walked toward the swing and touched the chain. We used to sit here every night, dreaming of a home. Alexander's gaze softened. He talked about you. In his journal. Her head snapped up. His journal. He nodded, pulling a small leather-bound notebook from his coat pocket. It was recovered after his death. I've kept it all these years. Her fingers shook as she took it. Inside, the faded handwriting brought back a flood of memories. Dear Sunshine, one entry read. If you're reading this, it means I couldn't keep my promise. But know that you were my light. Maybe one day, someone will find you and tell you that I never forgot you. Tears streamed down her face. He wrote to me. Alexander's own voice faltered. He loved you like family. And I think, that's why I brought you here. To finally give him peace. She looked up at him, eyes glistening. Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. He shook his head. Call me Alex. From that night onward, things changed. Alexander wasn't just her boss anymore. He became someone who quietly cared, checking if she'd eaten, walking her to the car, listening when she spoke about the children still at the orphanage. They began visiting every weekend, restoring the old place, funding new supplies. The laughter of children slowly returned to those empty halls. One day, as they painted the walls together, Emily turned to him with a smile. You know, Liam would be happy to see this. Alexander looked at her, his eyes warm for the first time. I think he already is. They stood there, paint on their hands, sunlight pouring through the windows. It felt like the past and present had finally found peace. But that night, As Emily was about to leave, Alexander called her name. Emily. She turned. He hesitated before saying, "You're more like him than anyone I've ever met. Maybe that's why I can finally smile again." She blushed faintly. "And maybe you needed a little sunshine too." He smiled, the first real smile she'd ever seen from him. "Maybe I did." Months later, the orphanage reopened, brighter and better than before. On the front wall hung a new plaque. "In loving memory of Liam Blackwell, the boy who brought light to others." As the children played around them, Emily and Alexander stood side by side, the wind carrying faint echoes of laughter from long ago. Emily whispered, "We did it, Liam. You're home now." Alexander's hand found hers. "And so are we." For the first time in years, the orphanage wasn't just a memory, it was a beginning.